Welcome everyone to our mass mobilization event. We will get started shortly. We're just giving it a little bit of time for folks to trickle into the room. We appreciate you joining us for our emergency organizing call to learn just how this one big dangerous tax bill threatens students, borrowers, and all Americans that care about education. We'll get started here in just a few minutes. All right, it's so wonderful to see so many people joining on a Thursday evening or late afternoon, depending on where you're calling from. Hello, everyone. My name is Natalia Abrams. I am the president here at Student Debt Crisis Center, one of the co-sponsors or partners of this event. We really appreciate you all joining us for this emergency organizing call. We are joined here by so many great partners, Student Borrower Protection Center, NAACP, Young Invincibles, the American Federation of Teachers, Move On, Young Invincibles, just countless others that have come together very quickly because you have been telling us that you want to learn more about how this bill is impacting you as a student, a borrower, a parent, as I mentioned before, anyone that cares about education in our country. This is the call for you. So we are really honored that you could all join us. We have 400 people and growing here on a Thursday afternoon, evening. And we are all here to support student loan borrowers and support Americans that care about education. And therefore, we reject President Trump's big, beautiful bill, which is really just a bad bill, horrible bill for student loan borrowers. Today, you're going to hear from Senator Warren, our great partners, students, parents. We're going to share with you what reconciliation means to you, what this disastrous bill, if passed in its form right now, would mean to you as somebody impacted with student loan debt. And most importantly, there's going to be opportunities on how to take immediate action and how we can protect these awful education cuts from happening. But first, it is my distinct honor to introduce Randy Weingarten. Randy is the president of the American Federation of Teachers, a union of 1.8 million teachers, paraprofessionals, school-related personnel, of higher education, faculty, staff, nurses, a whole plethora of employees and supporters that care deeply about education. The AFT is dedicated to the belief that every person in America deserves the freedom to thrive, fueled by opportunity, justice, and a voice in our democracy. Prior to her election at AFT, President Weingarten served for 11 years as president of the United Federation of Teachers, AFT Local 2, which was approximately 200,000 educators. Randy was a teacher, just wonderful person all around. And on our issue, it's important to note that Randy has stopped at nothing to ensure that teachers, nurses, and all public employees get the forgiveness they were promised. That's something all of us that are here partnering here today believe, that borrowers should get the forgiveness that they were promised. Randy even sued Betsy DeVos. She has been committed to fixing public service loan forgiveness program for over a decade. And we know that Randy will hold bad actors accountable and find solutions that actually help working people. Under her leadership, the American Federation of Teachers has become a union that fights to give people a better life, and student debt is one of her main issues that she continues fighting to help get economic security for all Americans. Randy, it's such a pleasure to have you here today.
It's really an honor for me, and I'm sorry that I am in a car I blurred the background so that you could, so that people wouldn't hopefully get nauseous as I go. But my, I had all these flight issues today, so I'm really, really glad that I could still be with you in person. And then I get to introduce Elizabeth Warren, who's one of all of our heroes. But Natalia, what you just said is so right. And because this bill is so bad, one of the really bad parts of it is kind of not getting the attention it needs. And that's the big cuts in the House ugly bill. And look, I do actually love the divorce that's going on between Trump and Musk, but let's be clear, they're both wrong in so many different ways. Because the big cuts here are to healthcare, to nutritional services, and to all of the student debt programs that have been operating, I don't know, for the last 10, 15 years from President Obama on. As many of us remember, those of us who've been at this for a while, the student debt situation was a mess before President Obama, and he tried to put it all together at the Department of Education, making the Department of Education one of the biggest banks in the country. Now, some of the things they got right, some of the things were still a mess. But President Biden really committed himself to to basically untying the Gordian knot and doing the following things. He and Congress, as many people who are eligible for Pell Grants, get them Pell Grants, get them a way that they could have more affordability. Then the second big area was, income-driven repayment. So if you had a huge nut in terms of student debt, and so many people have student debt, 45 million people, and you had a really huge nut, and you hopefully raise a family, buy a house, start your life, then your debt was not going to be based upon what was originally negotiated, but based upon your income. And what we tried to do under the Biden administration is actually get it capped at less than about 5%. That was the SAVE plan. And the third big area, as Natalia said, was public service loan forgiveness, which was a Bush program that was also sponsored by Ted Kennedy and Hillary Clinton as senators, bipartisan, that essentially said, if you worked in the public service for 10 years, then the rest of your loans were forgiven, whether you were cops or firefighters or nurses or teachers. Of course, Betsy DeVos tried to make that program null and void. The first year was started in 2007. So the first year, people were supposed to get their loans excused or forgiven was 2017. And we all know 98% of the loan forgiveness was rejected. 2% was accepted. Something's very wrong with that. So over the course of the last few years, we've been trying to untie this Gordian knot with everybody, every group that's on this phone. Some of us sued, some of us sat in, some of us went to Congress, some of us did all of the above, some of us did education and clinics every week. But we really tried to say, we got to make college affordable and we got to make student debt repayment affordable. So I could go on and on, but what this bill does is basically takes $300 billion out of the budget, which essentially means every subsidy is gone. Income-driven repayment is essentially gone. And they monkey around with Pell in such a way that a lot of people who can't afford college or are first-generation college goers in the first place are not going to be able to have Pell Grants available to them. So we need this organizing that we're doing tonight because we need to tell the stories of what this means. They are basically taking a hatchet to college affordability because they don't want, they're fearful of knowledge. You see the assaults on universities. In fact, I just wrote a book about all this that's going to be out in September about why fascists fear teachers. They fear knowledge, and they fear all of us who want to pursue knowledge and help young people pursue knowledge so that they have the opportunities that they want to have, not the opportunities that Donald Trump wants them to have, but the opportunities that they want to have. And what else does this bill do? Yeah, as Elon Musk has said, it does increase the debt because the tax cuts are so damn high for the rich and the wealthy that it's not enough to cut over $1 trillion in healthcare, in Medicaid, in nutritional supports, in all of these college affordability plans. They are essentially 70% of the benefits of the bill go to the top 5% at the expense of the bottom 40%. It is a reverse Robin Hood. And so ultimately, we are fighting it, but we need to tell the stories, and we need to educate people, and we need to be out there to show the direct harm that the House of Representatives is trying to do to the American dream and to everyone who is trying to get the American dream. And so that's why today is so important. It can't be done by just the leaders of these groups. The most important organizers are all of you telling your stories, looking Congress people in the eyes and saying, even those of you who voted for Trump or support Trump, that's not what we voted for. Sorry, I didn't vote for him. That's not what most of the people I know who voted for Trump voted for. We need America to be about fighting for the American dream for all of us, not for simply the rich and the well-heeled. And that's what this big, ugly bill does. Hurts everyone in order to benefit the rich, and hurts everyone for generations upon generations with the debt that they have imposed on people. So I'm so glad to be with all of you. I'm so glad to be with all of you on the streets, educating people, but we got to be on the streets and we got to educate people because they will lie each and every day about what they're trying to do to take opportunity away. It's only your stories. It's only us on the streets. It's only us together in trying to confront the Congress people who do not want to help people thrive. That's why we have to do this all together. And with that, one of the people who have blown the whistle on all of this for so long, and who, as one of the first acts in the Obama administration, was to start the civilian review, the protection board, and you see what they're doing to that as well, is our dear, dear friend and the dear senator from Massachusetts, Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Hello, it is so great to join you virtually today. I want to start with a big thank you to every single one of you for joining today's call. Your leadership in this fight is important and deeply inspiring. I'm here today because I believe that everyone should have a shot at the American dream, no matter their income, their race, or their zip code. Public education has put that dream in reach for millions and millions of Americans. And in the coming weeks, Congress has a simple question before it. Are we a country that only works to help the rich get richer? Or are we a country that invests in education so that everybody has a chance to succeed? Donald Trump and the Republicans have already made their choice clear. Their big, beautiful bill is one big mess that will put higher education even further out of reach for more American families. Republicans in Congress want to cut the Pell Grants that help working people pay for college. They want to jack up monthly payments for people with student loan debt. They want to stretch out how long it takes to repay student loans by another 10 years. And they want to end protections that keep greedy for-profit colleges from ripping off students and from cheating them. And why? It's all to pay for tax giveaways to Donald Trump's billionaire and millionaire buddies. It is truly sickening. But we are not powerless. And I know that this group is not just going to roll over and let this happen. So, time to get in the fight. Call your representatives, share your stories, tell them what these attacks on public education mean for you, for your family, for your friends. And when you've called them once, call them again and call them again. Show up at a protest. And if you don't know where there's a protest, plan a protest. We need to do everything we can to put pressure on Trump's Republican buddies and to stop this bill in its tracks. Because understand this, no country builds a strong future by shortchanging the education of its young people. This is a defining moment for our country, and fighting back starts with a strong grassroots movement. And that's what today's call is all about. I am honored to fight alongside you. Let's get in this fight and let's win.
Well, I don't know about you all, but I am fired up to hear from two amazing women, Randy Weingarten and Senator Elizabeth Warren. It is just so inspiring. And Senator Warren's absolutely right. We have work to do. We need to share our stories. We need to take action. But I think it's important, and I'm already seeing some folks in the chat, to understand just what's going on. So we're going to hear a brief overview on reconciliation and the threat to working families from Michael Linden, the Executive Director of Family Over Billionaires. Michael, do I have you?
Yes, you do. Hello. Thanks, Natalia. Thank you to everybody for joining. Thank you to the Student Borrower Protection Center, the Student Debt Crisis Center, and all the partners for organizing this call. Thank you to Senator Warren, to President Weingarten. It's an honor to be here. So my name is Michael Linden. I am the director of the Families Over Billionaires campaign. We are a campaign against this reconciliation bill that I'm about to tell you about. My job here tonight is to give you a little bit of an overview of what's in the bill, what's the process, and how you can engage in it. And you're going to hear more about that from other partners in just a moment. So 2 weeks ago in the House of Representatives, Republicans passed their what I call the billionaire tax scam through the House along party lines. Every single Democrat in the House voted against it. There were 2 Republican votes against it as well, but they passed it with one single vote margin. This bill, this reconciliation bill, you might hear people call it that, is a special process that they are using that allows them to avoid a filibuster in the Senate, which means they can pass it in the Senate with just 50 votes, which means every single Democrat is going to vote against this bill, almost certainly, and I think that is a pretty strong certainty. But we still need 4 Republicans in the Senate to vote against it, or else they will be able to pass it using this special fast track process. The bill is now before the Senate. They are thinking about it. They're going to make some changes, they're likely to make some changes. And if they are able to come to an agreement and pass it, it will go back to the House one more time for a final vote. So this bill is not over. This process is not done, but we are in the thick of it right now. It could be over in a matter of weeks. So your voice is super important. So let me just tell you a little bit about what this bill really is, okay? At the core of this bill is $4 trillion of tax cuts, most of which go to the richest Americans in the country. The core of this bill is a tax cut for wealthy people and corporations. The plan will give out an average tax break of over $250,000 a year annually to the richest 0.1% of Americans. Meanwhile, the bottom 20% of Americans would actually pay more in taxes on average, and most middle-income families would be left out and pay, get no benefit or very small benefits. But that's not the end of the story. The bill also has $800 billion of cuts to healthcare, $300 billion of cuts to nutrition assistance, and $300 billion of cuts to education, as you've already heard a little bit about. What does that mean in practice? Those are big numbers, those billions, trillions. What does that mean? Let me tell you what that means. We know that 16 million people will lose their health insurance because of this bill. There are 16 million people who have health insurance today who will not have it when this bill passes. There are millions more who will pay more for their health care. Even if they are able to keep it, their costs will go up. Their copays, their deductibles, their insurance, just their premiums will all go up. Millions of people, whether you are on Medicaid or not, your costs are likely to go up because of this bill. It also takes food assistance through the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, sometimes known as food stamps. It takes food assistance away from millions of people. Estimates are that at least 3 million Americans could lose their food assistance, and it could mean that 18 million children who currently get school meals will not have access to those school meals because there's a connection between SNAP and food and school meal programs. It also, of course, will increase the cost of student loan borrowers and Pell Grant recipients. It also will mean higher energy costs as it repeals many of the green energy incentives that were passed under the last administration to bring down energy costs and to make energy costs more sustainable for everybody. So that is what's in the bill. And that sounds a little bit like hyperbole sometimes when I tell people that the bill fundamentally will mean that most Americans will pay more so that rich people can pay less. They think that that can't be true. That's so backwards. It's so upside down. It can't be true. And if you're thinking that right now, that seems evil. That seems wrong. You're not alone. Most Americans agree with you. This bill is not popular. When people learn about what's in the bill, they hate it. Whether they are Republicans, Democrats, or independents, this is an unpopular bill. Fundamentally, this bill will mean higher costs for almost all Americans, except for rich people who will get giant tax cuts. Students and borrowers in particular will be especially harmed. And you're going to hear a lot more about that from other speakers in a moment, but it's important to underscore this, and I agree with President Weingarten, this has not gotten enough attention. The bill has $300 million in what they call cuts from funding for higher education, but what it really means is that you will pay more. That's what it means. That's what the cuts are, is that borrowers will pay more. So it means that borrowers will accrue interest on their loans while you're still in school. That's not what happens now. It will cut Pell Grants. It will make students pay taxes on financial aids and scholarships. It will eliminate tax credits that help students afford tuition. It will place lifetime caps on borrowing. It will overhaul all of the borrowing programs that you heard about. This will mean that 42 million Americans who currently have student loan debt will pay more. Fundamentally, this bill is a you pay more so that rich people can pay less bill. That is what it is. And it sounds bananas, but that is exactly what it is. And every independent analysis has shown this. Now, yes, they passed it through the House. The Senate is up next. And yes, if they get every Republican to vote for it, it will pass. But that is not a predetermined outcome. We were able to save healthcare for millions of Americans in 2017. We can do it again. It's not too late to stop this bill from becoming a law. We need to be loud about the bill. We need to make sure that most Americans hear about what's in the bill. We know that when Americans hear about what's in the bill, they oppose it. Republicans in Congress are hoping to pass this bill quickly and without people paying attention because they also can read the same polls that I can and know this bill is super unpopular. They need to hear from you. They need to hear from your family members, from your neighbors, from your friends that this bill is unacceptable. We should not be raising costs on hardworking American families, all to pay for tax cuts for billionaires. That is the absolute most backwards thing we could possibly be doing. Politicians in Washington need to ultimately decide whose side they're on. Are they on the side of working families or on the side of rich people, billionaires, and giant corporations? I really appreciate having this opportunity to give you this overview. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Aisa.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you so much for providing that really helpful overview. And I am just so appreciative of all of the work that you and the borrower or Families Over Billionaires organization have done to really kind of shed light on how this bill is really a very dangerous attack on so many children and families across this country. So we really appreciate your partnership and for joining us for this conversation. So hello, everyone. My name is Aisa Canchola Bañez. I am the policy director with the Student Borrower Protection Center. We are a national nonprofit advocacy and policy organization working to bring an end to the student debt crisis, working to advance policies that protect borrower rights, and also really push us to be the country that needs to treat higher education as the public good that it is, so that millions of students are not forced to take on lifetimes of student loan debt just for the chance of a higher education and the chance to unlock the American dream. And so with that, I'm very grateful to be with you all this evening and to be a part of this really important conversation. The fact is that this, in Washington right now, as we've heard from several of our speakers, as well as Senator Warren, policymakers in Congress right now are really trying hard to force across the finish line a very, very dangerous bill. President Trump and his allies in Congress have dubbed this bill the big, beautiful bill. But in reality, it is a really big, dangerous threat. And it's a threat to the economic security and the well-being of millions of working families. And as Michael had mentioned, and it's all for what? It's to pay for over $4 trillion in tax cuts for the richest Americans and biggest corporations across the country. And so, just as a brief recap, the House passed this bill just last month in the early hours of the morning of May 22nd, when most of the country was still sleeping. And why do you think that is? And the reality is that it's because policymakers assume and they hope that the American public will just not notice, that they will not notice the fact that they are actively taking action to rob millions of children and families of their health care, of SNAP benefits, of affordable energy, of protections like those that the agencies like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau provide for workers and families to protect them from being defrauded by big greedy corporations and banks, and also not notice the fact that this bill is actively working to push a college education further out of reach for millions of students and families across this country. And the reality is that, while this bill has gotten some notable headlines and attention, particularly in some of the healthcare related cuts, unfortunately, it's been really difficult to get attention on the education cuts. And so that's why it's very, very important to have conversations like these, to bring our coalition, to bring directly affected folks, to bring allies together to discuss and learn about how this bill will harm people who are directly on this call, and also harm communities that we all call home, and ultimately make higher education more expensive and the burden of student debt even more expensive. So this is an opportunity to talk about policy in Washington and how it's going to affect all of our lives, and most importantly, what we can do to stand up, to push back, and to have our voices heard. And so with that, let's dig in and learn more about what students and families with student debt need to know about this big, dangerous tax bill. All right, so, it was just months ago that President Trump and congressional Republicans promised the American people swift action to lower everyday costs. And instead, what we've seen is just months of chaos, of economic uncertainty driven by this president's tariff policy and trade policy, and just, watching this administration wreak havoc across the federal government. And then we see this bill, HR 1, which will ultimately make college even more expensive and push families further into debt. And how does it do this? So it does this by cutting $350 billion in education funding. And this includes financial aid, critical student and borrower protections, all in order to bankroll these $4.5 trillion of tax cuts for the biggest corporations and billionaires. So where specifically do these cuts come from? So the cuts completely take a sledgehammer to the Pell Grant program, slashing grant aid that is intended to support some of the lowest income families and students as they struggle to pay for college. It does this by increasing various eligibility requirements, which will essentially force students to enroll in even more classes to qualify for their maximum Pell Grant award. And it also reduces or completely eliminates actually eligibility for students who are attending higher education on a less than half-time basis. So as a result of these cuts, nearly 2 out of 3 recipients could lose some or all of their Pell Grant aid. What this amounts to is 3 million students could see cuts to their awards. Over 1 million students could lose eligibility altogether. And so when we consider the types of students and families that Pell Grants particularly support, we're talking about disproportionately low-income students and families, disproportionately students who are attending community colleges. There's a lot of misrepresentations of who today's student in higher education is across the country. And the reality is the majority are older students. They're student parents. They're parents who are juggling multiple jobs and trying to invest in their higher education while also shuffling the responsibilities of being a parent and a worker and supporting their families. And so with these cuts, we are literally seeing massive cuts to some of the programs that directly support some of our most vulnerable students and families across our higher education system. In addition to cutting grant aid, the bill would also drastically cut and eliminate financial aid programs, specifically subsidized loans, which Michael had mentioned before. These are loans for undergraduate students that help a student attend school without the interest on their loans accruing while they are enrolled. And also eliminates Graduate Plus loans. These are a critical federal funding stream that helps support students who are pursuing graduate and professional education. As a result of these types of program eliminations, a study has estimated that by eliminating subsidized loans, students could be forced to pay $12,000 more to finance their undergraduate education over the life of their loan. That's because of the interest that will accrue and the increased cost of their loan over the long term. With the elimination of Graduate Plus loans, we could see more students and families pushed into the predatory private loan market to pay for college, where we know products are much more expensive, are much more risky, and come with a lot less protections and benefits, such as the ability to pursue public service loan forgiveness after 10 years and working in a public service field, or accessing certain protections like forbearances and deferments should a student or should a borrower hit hard financial times. So not only is this bill making it more expensive to pay for college, it's making it more risky by forcing more and more folks to have to enter into the private market in order to secure financing to pay for college. In addition, the bill also sets new caps on financial aid eligibility across the board and sets it at the median cost of college of a student's program of study. So what does this mean? It means that half of students in half of all programs could meet the cap on federal financial aid and be forced to then either drop out because they can't cover the costs because of the gap in funding, or again, be pushed into this private market where they will have to navigate financing and accessing financing through a private bank or some sort of lender, which makes them much more vulnerable to predatory lending and types of abuses that we see run rampant in the private market. And I do want to just say, these cuts are incredibly dangerous, but we shouldn't be surprised. So many of these provisions were included in Project 2025 that President Trump and that this administration claimed to have nothing to do with, but here we are seeing all of this in black and white coming through fruition through legislation, and it's incredibly dangerous for families. Next slide, please. So those were the cuts on the front end, the cuts to financial aid that is supposed to make paying for college more affordable and accessible. And then what we see is this bill makes drastic cuts to affordable repayment options. We heard Randy mention these at the top. And so it does this by completely eliminating the SAVE plan. Many of you enrolled in this plan might be on this call right now. There are currently 8 million borrowers who are enrolled in the SAVE plan. And so what this bill aims to do is it eliminates SAVE as well as all other income-driven repayment plans, and would force borrowers who are already enrolled in these plans to enroll into a much more expensive, updated income-based repayment plan. This plan would force borrowers to pay significantly more, especially for folks who are currently enrolled in SAVE. According to one study, the average SAVE borrower could be forced to pay $2,900 more per year on their student loans. And by just eliminating all of the current IDR plans and forcing those borrowers into this updated income-based repayment plan, many borrowers could see their student loan bills increase by 50%. And so these are not just proposals that are going to go on to affect future borrowers. They have real implications for the millions of borrowers right now who are just trying to responsibly repay their student loans that they took on while they were just investing in themselves and their education. In addition, the bill also creates a new set of repayment options. So it eliminates most of the IDR plans and replaces them with 2 new plans. One standard repayment plan that allows a borrower to extend the amount of time that they're in repayment based on how much loan debt they take on originally, and a new income based plan that is known as the Repayment Assistance Plan, or otherwise known as a RAP. And this is available for new borrowers as well. Under this RAP plan, borrowers would no longer have the ability to access $0 payments, which has acted as a very critical safeguard, particularly for some of the lowest income borrowers who hit hard financial times and are able to access a $0 payment while still accumulating credit towards forgiveness under income-driven repayment. And without this safeguard, we could very well see massive spikes in borrower delinquency, falling behind, and borrower defaults, which is going to have a massive impact economically on that individual borrower and their family, but also the economy writ large. And then under this plan, it increases the timeline to forgiveness to 30 years, as opposed to 20 or 25 years under the current income-driven repayment options. So not only are we, with this bill, forcing borrowers to pay more on a monthly basis, but they're also being forced to pay for even longer. So in addition to that, this bill would end borrowers' ability to access critical economic hardship deferments and unemployment deferments. That these are protections that are unique to federal student loans, and really play a critical role in being that economic buffer when a borrower is in financial distress, or if a borrower is laid off. And it's particularly cruel right now when you consider all of the economic stress and uncertainty that so many families are experiencing, to kind of tear this safeguard out from under borrowers right now is really cruel, and it's economically dangerous for so many. And so not only would the bill make college more expensive and harder to pay, not only would it make student loans harder and more expensive to pay, but it also makes attending higher education just more risky. And it does this by weakening critical protections in the law that have been really charged with protecting veterans, students, and from being defrauded by low quality schools and saddled with massive mountains of student loan debt, and also the processes that have really provided student loan borrowers the option to get relief if they were cheated. So it does this specifically by eliminating the 90-10 rule. This prevents predatory for-profit colleges from targeting student veterans to capitalize on their GI Bill benefits. It strikes the gainful employment rule that simply says, if you are a training program that is promising to provide students with the skills and the earnings needed in a particular field, that they actually follow through on that. It strikes those types, that protection, and ultimately weakens the borrower defense to repayment rules, as well as closed school discharge rules that will ultimately make it harder for students to access relief and justice under these programs. And so what we're really seeing here is that this bill is really doubling down on the the priorities of this administration to make college more expensive and to allow predatory for-profit colleges and predatory actors to really capitalize off the dreams of billions of students and families, all to pay for tax cuts for many of the richest Americans. And so what's most important about this conversation is not just to talk about the policy, but to center the stories of students and borrowers and families that could be directly affected. And so with that, I'm happy to give the stage over to Emory, who is going to share his story about how this bill will make college and his college dreams impossible for him and his family.
Thank you so much, Aisha. I really appreciate you for the lovely words and your introduction, giving statistics about how the reconciliation bill will affect students such as myself. So good evening, everyone. My name is Emory Etum. I'm a senior history pre-law student at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, hailing from Raleigh, North Carolina. And I'm honored to be here today because it's important that students like myself share our journeys and that we advocate for, vital social safety programs that shape all of our futures. My frontline involvement with the NAACP began in February of 2023 at the Student Debt Cancellation Rally in Washington, D.C. At this rally, I got the privilege to stand near Senator Warren as she delivered her remarks, which were both inspiring and fueled my passion for civil rights and social justice. I also had the honor of be able to stand within a few feet of Senator Bernie Sanders as well, as he gave one of his enthusiastic speeches. And this rally was my first. This rally is what ignited my commitment to seek leadership within my campus NAACP chapter. This rally is what showed me the work that was being done behind the scenes and the people who didn't mind standing in the cold air to see that this change happened. From that point on, I aspired to contribute to change in any capacity that I could, whether that meant event organizing on campus, attending rallies, or speaking at webinars just like this. And it's a reminder of the impact that advocacy can have, not just as an individual, but for entire communities. And let me just say that government assistance has been very pivotal within my household. My mother has been disabled since November of 2016, and she relies on Medicaid and disability benefits. My father also worked for over 30 years at the very same company. He retired during the COVID-19 pandemic. So the funds that they receive from the government are very minimal, but they definitely do help because the funds that they receive alone would not cover my college education. However, thank you to the federal Pell Grant, my family only has to pay a couple $1,000s per semester, making my higher education accessible for students like myself. But we also let's reflect, because President Trump's reconciliation bill, I feel like it goes against the core values of our nation. The United States was meant to be a place where we care for one another, not just looking out for the wealthy. Why are we allowing policies to strip resources from the poor just to fill the pockets of billionaires? I sit here today in opposition of the reconciliation bill proposed by President Trump, which threatens the very same programs that support communities and put students like myself in a better position. Like mentioned before, this bill makes a $350 billion cut to education, Medicaid, SNAP benefits, etc., directly harming our lowest income students and families. It slashes Pell Grants for nearly 2/3 of recipients and eliminates essential financial aid programs, making college even more expensive and inaccessible for the working class families. It forces borrowers into longer repayment periods, pushing them further into debt. And this is a pattern that we have seen before. The tax cuts in the Jobs Act of 2017 gave massive tax breaks to corporations and the wealthy, while cutting crucial funding for programs that support low-income families and students. And the Budget Control Act, although enacted in earlier years, continued to strangle funding for vital programs like SNAP, leading to increased food insecurity And proposed cuts to Medicaid during the Trump administration threatened to strip healthcare from millions, including those who need it the most, like my mother. And let us not forget the repeated attempts to cut funding for veterans, benefits, and education programs, which are lifelines for so many people in our community. So, like I said before, we cannot let this reconciliation bill add to the harmful legislation that we've seen in the past. My family has directly benefited from programs like Medicaid, which provided my mother with life-saving surgeries in the past, and I personally have benefited as well through Medicaid. After long financial struggles, we have been struggling years to afford braces. All my life, I have struggled with stuttering due to uncomfortable alignment within my teeth, and I was denied twice. And the cost for braces was $7,000. But luckily, last year, with the appeal through my orthodontist, I was able to be granted free braces, which in return gave me much needed confidence and allowed me to speak with conviction in certain spaces, as I also seek to become a civil rights attorney. And the NAACP chapter at North Carolina A&T is eager to be on the front lines of this cause. We want to continue advocating for the protection of social safety programs, and we urge everyone here to keep us involved in the fight as well. So, with my closing remarks, I urge policymakers and everyone in this meeting to oppose to the cuts in the reconciliation bill, and let us prioritize the needs of our companies over the interests of billionaires. Together, we can ensure that the American dream remains accessible for all. Thank you, and hope to see everyone here at our national convention being held in Charlotte this summer in July. With that being said, I will now give the floor to Ms. Sasha Taylor, a student and borrower at the University of Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. It is a true honor to be in community with you all as we stand together to resist attacks on students and families at the hands of this administration. As mentioned, my name is Satcher D. Taylor, and I stand before you today as a proud first-generation college student, beneficiary of the Pell Grant and Grad Plus loans, and a current doctoral student at the University of Maryland, College Park. However, one of the most important aspects of my identity is being an eldest daughter who descends from generations of hardworking and resilient Black Americans who believed in the transformative power of higher education. My village back home in Cincinnati invested all they could in me, hoping that college would be a ladder to help me climb out of poverty. They weren't wrong. I gained intangible experiences because of my access to a higher education. And I believed this then as an undergraduate student, and I believe it even more now as a doctoral student. College access should be available to any aspiring student who dares to dream and achieve. This is why I'm here, joining y'all in this fight against a tax bill that threatens the futures of countless students and families across our nation. This bill, pushed through by House Republicans, is not just a piece of legislation. It is an attack on our dreams, our aspirations, and our very right to pursue higher education without the burden of crippling debt. As a Black woman navigating the higher education system, I can tell you that the path has never been easy. The dream schools I once envisioned attending became distant fantasies, not due to a lack of qualifications, but because the financial barriers were insurmountable. I share this to highlight a harsh reality. I am not alone. Many students, as you will hear today, are facing the same struggles. And now with the proposed cuts to Pell Grants and the elimination of subsidized loans, the situation is about to worsen. This is unacceptable, and enough is enough. This tax bill is not just a financial issue, it is a moral one. It is an attack on families, working class communities, and students like me who dare to dream of a better future. We deserve more than just the crumbs left behind by those in power. We have the right to pursue our educational dreams without the shadow of a lifetime of debt looming over us. Together, we can ensure that education remains a pathway to opportunity for all, not just a privilege for the few. Thank you all for standing with us today, especially on a late afternoon and evening. Let's continue to raise our voices until we achieve the change that we deserve. I am now honored to pass it to Natasha, a parent and proud veteran, to share her story. Thank you all for attending, and God bless.
Good evening, everyone. It is an honor to join you all for this virtual organizing call. My name is Tasha Burkhalter. I am a mother of 5 beautiful children, and my oldest will be finishing her senior year this December from Norfolk State University. I felt compelled to join today's discussion because I am tired of politicians in Washington debating whether or not our babies are allowed to pursue their dreams of a higher education and the chance to live the American dream. I am tired of the politicians in Washington passing policies about us without us. So I'd like to thank you all for also joining here virtually today and for learning about how you too can have your voice heard. Because our voices are powerful and they are necessary in this moment. The reality is, this big, dangerous bill will make paying for college more expensive for families like mine and incredibly more risky. And for what? To make billionaires across the country even more richer? It is absolutely shameful. As a mom, I am terrified about what this bill could mean for the future of my babies. If it wasn't for the Pell Grant and other financial aid programs, including student loans, it simply would not have been possible for us to afford to send our daughter to college. And I know our story is not unique. Most families across this country can't just write a six-figure check to send their children off to college. We deserve a country that invests in public education and ensures that all students are able to access a high quality education, regardless of what side of the tracks they live on. And we shouldn't be burdened with a lifetime of student debt to make our dreams of an education a reality. This is personal to me, not just as a mother, but as a proud Army veteran who honorably served this nation. Despite my service and GI Bill benefits, I was one of the many Americans crushed under the weight of student loans, cheated by a predatory for profit college that left me drowning in nearly $100,000 in student loan debt. I graduated from ITT Tech with a bachelor's degree in science in 2010. Despite being told my GI Bill would cover tuition, I unknowingly ended up with federal and private loans to pay for my schooling. When it came time to begin interviewing for jobs, employers showed me the door. Soon as I mentioned that my degree was from ITT Tech, it was devastating. Unable to find a job in my field made it nearly impossible for me to support my family. We lost our home, our car. We were even forced to live with my parents at one time and then my in laws. It took a toll on my marriage as well as my mental health. And I eventually defaulted on my loans and saw my entire tax return offset, which made things financially even harder. I thought my life was ruined. Thankfully, I was one of those blessed ones in 2021 when my relief was made possible by the dedicated public service workers of the Department of Education, who processed and approved my borrow defense application, a process created by Congress for defrauded borrowers like myself to access student debt relief and justice. Instead of cracking down on predatory schools that are cheating veterans like me, this bill will weaken protections that help hold schools accountable for defrauding students, leaving them with debt they cannot repay, and making it harder for students like me to seek relief and justice. Instead of protecting students, including veterans, just to create a better life for themselves and their families, this bill will make it easier for profit colleges to line their pockets at our expense. We should be making college more affordable for working families like mine all over this country, as millions of families are struggling to cover the rising cost of critical goods and services. This bill will just make things even harder. We deserve better. Our babies deserve better. And I hope you will join me in demanding our politicians to do the right thing and to reject these harmful cuts to education and financial aid programs that so many students and families rely on. I thank you all for your time. I will now give the floor to Alex from the Young Invisibles.
Hello, everyone. This is my favorite part of the webinar because after hearing about the big dangerous bill, all the terrible things it's going to do, you should be fired up and ready to go and get involved. So that's what we're here to discuss today. We have a action item here that is an excellent tool you can use to directly call your senators. And I'm going to specifically talk about why that's so important. As Senator Warren touched on in her original speech at the beginning, calling makes a big difference. Senators specifically have constituent staff to listen to your concerns. And district offices and DC offices have a software called Fireside where they actually log those calls. and they do get reported. So as Senator Warren touched on, not only should you call once, you should call multiple times to tell them how angry you are with this bill, because that gets reported and then it gets shared with the senator themselves, and it can make a difference. And so a couple quick things here with this tool. We've made it really easy for you. All you have to do is, as you can see on the screen here, the action link is in the chat as well, so you should be able to access it there. But it's really easy. This web page, all you do is put in your zip code, your phone number, and your email, and then you'll hit call officials, which should prompt you to a new page with a script, as you can see here, that you can use as your talking points when you call. It'll also show the senators you'll be calling at the bottom of the screen, so you know their name and everything. And then you'll see that button right there where we're not going to have Amy click it because then it'll call her senators. But you'll click that and you'll actually get a phone call from a DC number where our lovely comms director over here at Young Invincibles, Kate, she'll give you another quick run through of the talking points, give you a little quick overview, and then you'll hit star on your keypad and you'll be directly connected to your senator's office. An important note with that is you should theoretically call both of your senators by using this tool. You may have to hit, after you hit star the first time, after you complete the first call, you should have to hit it again to connect to your second senator or whichever order they come in. To make the following call, you'll have to hit star again. And so some quick do's and don'ts for the conversation specifically. Like I said, staff are there to listen to your concerns. So definitely start off by mentioning you're a constituent of the senator. Don't be afraid to mention that. Lastly, as we've touched on and talking points have been shared, make sure you stick to those and express your concern over the cuts and the tax breaks. But with that, make sure if you do have a personal anecdote or a personal touch to add to those talking points, if you were a Pell Grant recipient, if you're particularly concerned regarding any of the Medicaid or SNAP cuts, and you're a college student, definitely try to add a personal touch if you can to those talking points and make it your own story, because that has a direct impact as well. Be assertive, but be respectful. Some unfriendly offices may try to usher you off the call quicker or be a little dismissive, but be assertive in your tone. They're there to listen to you. That's what the constituent staff are there for. Don't let them usher you off the call. And then some, general don'ts. Don't get overly too confrontational. They are district staff, but they are also people too. No cursing or swearing. Be assertive, but don't get confrontational. Try not to be an expert on all the issues. They're not expecting you to be a policy expert. Stick to the talking points and the data we've provided within those. And they're not expecting you to be an expert on the issue areas. And so don't hold yourself to that standard as you head into the call. Lastly, don't try to include everything in one call. So if you want to call one day about Pell Grants and then you want to call the next day about the loan cap cut or the loan cap changes or anything within regards to the student debt and IDR plan changes, you can make multiple calls and tackle different issues in each call. And then lastly, as I touched on, don't let the staff rush you off the call. Some staff in certain offices might try to move the conversation along really quick, but like I said, just be assertive, be confident in your talking points, and make sure you hit everything you want to hit. Don't let them kind of rush you off quickly or dismiss you. And lastly, I think we're going to give you a quick mock run through just so you can kind of see what this might look like and help you dip your toes in a little bit and so it doesn't seem so intimidating. So I'd love for Randy, who is the president of students at Tacoma Community College, to come on board. And we're going to do a quick run through where I'm going to play our lovely staffer and Randy's going to be calling Senator Murray's office. So Randy, I don't know if you want to do like a fake phone and do a ring ring.
Ring, ring.
Oh, hello. Thank you for calling Senator Murray's office. How can I help you?
Good afternoon. My name is Randy Phillips. My zip code is 98335. I'm a direct constituent and proud voter. I'm calling today to urge Senator Murray to oppose the cuts to the House passed reconciliation bill. This bill makes $350 billion in education cuts, as well as harmful cuts to Medicaid and SNAP benefits that will harm our lowest income students and families. And all of that to pay for tax cuts for billionaires. The bill is going to cut Pell Grants for nearly 2/3 of Pell recipients, eliminate subsidized loans and Grad Plus loans, which will make it more expensive for working families just like mine to pay for college. The bill is also going to make it harder and more expensive to repay student loan debt by spiking monthly student loan bills and forcing borrowers to have to repay their loans even longer. We're talking like 30 years up from the 20 to 25. I want Senator Murray to oppose these cuts, and not only that, speak publicly about how these education cuts will push college out of reach for working families. And thank you so much for your time taking my call.
Yeah, no, Randy, thank you for calling today. You know, Senator Murray, she's a great champion for students. I'll definitely uplift this to the legislative director, and please continue calling. You know, this fight isn't over. But any opportunity we can to hear from your voice and hear from constituents is what we need as we continue this fight. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for your work.
And that's as simple as it is. Now that, granted, in this instance, you know, we're calling Senator Murray. That's a very friendly office. Granted, on other calls, you might, like I said, you might have the staffer be a little more, try to quickly get you off, but make sure you get through your piece as Randy did perfectly, and hit all the definite points. As I touched on, Randy, thank you so much. The link is in the chat there. So if you want to take action tomorrow or tonight, you can. But as we touched on, this bill is currently being debated among senators, so now is the time to call. We're in the thick of it, so make sure you pick up your phones.
And I have the unique and pleasure opportunity to pass things off to Nick Marcil from the Debt Collective.
Awesome. Thank you, Randy. And really great to be here with all these wonderful folks here, again, fighting against this big, dangerous bill, big disaster bill, that is in the midst, right? I think folks did a great job in highlighting a lot of the intricacies within it. Also, shout out to Randy and Alex for going through a little bit of the role play just with the tool and calling. I don't know if Amy, you want to throw back up the slides just with kind of a couple of links that we were just going to share to folks. At least. So definitely, of just thinking at the end of this call of, how are you taking action, right? Whether it is this call tool link from Young Invincibles here, which I know has been shared in the chat, making sure to do so with that. But also, other than, calling your senators in this time, I wanted to highlight that in particular, the Debt Collective, that we're bringing some folks down to Washington, D.C., right, to get into some of these Senate offices, get in their faces in the halls, really highlight our stories and really highlight of how dangerous and disastrous this bill is, because we know that, calling is one step, right? But also how can we get in person in these people's faces and really highlight what this is going to do to people across the country. Then we also have here handedly a helpful state fact sheet by AFT and also a one-pager by TICAS and Ed Trust. But just again, saying that there are so many of these organizations that are here today, tonight, with us, a whole list. I know we're going to be sending out these slides afterwards, so you don't need to grab all of these links, but those are there for folks to be able to contact or connect with any of these organizations. And also, all of you had such incredible ideas. I know I saw in the Q&A to just, uplift and highlight. But again, if you're, down to right after this call, use that call tool that's in the chat. Be sure to do so. If you're interested in joining Debt Collective and others in DC, whether that's June 11th, June 18th, or June 25th, be sure to use this bit.ly right here, this link in the chat. But again, it's been really awesome to be here in this space tonight with all of you, and I'm going to pass it back off to Natalia as we wrap up and close.
Thank you so much, Nick. And thank you to everyone who joined. We had over 500 people on a Thursday evening. I think the biggest takeaway is this awful, horrible bill is a bad bill for student loan borrowers. We just really encourage you to call your senators. I know that when I get off this, first thing I do tomorrow when I wake up is making my calls to my senators and letting them know that they have to reject these education cuts. We are so grateful that you're here today. Make sure to call, email, share your story. This is the time to get loud. We together can make change. Thank you so much for being here tonight, and we hope you have a wonderful day. Oh, and thank you to all of our wonderful partners for pulling this together, Senator Warren and AFT President Randy Weingarten. Have a great night, all.